Since last year, my girlfriend and I have become passionate gravel bikers. Our bikes now either stand somewhere in our home or are used for indoor training on the Smart Trainer. The same applies to our cycling shoes, glasses and helmets. While wall mounts for bikes and gear are common, I wanted to incorporate a feature I hadn't seen anywhere else. I show you how I built a wall mount for our bikes that not only looks great but also offers unique features. To get a feel for whether my idea would work in practice, I built a simple prototype. For the cycling shoes, I designed supports on both the left and right side. The helmet can be hung in the middle on kind of a hook, and the glasses find a place directly underneath. If you're curious about how the bike can be hung on the mount, here's how it works. For this, these two supports are folded down, and the bike can simply be hung by its top tube. Purely functional, the wall mount could look like this. But since the wall mount will be hanging on the wall in our hallway, we're going to build the whole thing fancy now. I built the body out of maple wood and used walnut for accent pieces. I love the contrast between the two species of wood, but feel free to let your creativity run wild with this project. Let me know your favorite wood combinations in the comments. To begin, I laid out and rough cut the individual parts. I then jointed them on two faces on the jointer. Then I used the thickness planer to plane them to the desired thickness. For the back panel and shoe supports, I resawed the boards with a bandsaw and then planed them to the desired thickness. Of course, you can also use pre-planed wood or sheet material for this. The beauty of this design is that you can build this wall mount using simple tools and let your creativity run wild. For the back panel, I glued the resawn boards together. Then cut them to the desired length and width. I wanted to securely integrate the back panel into the body, as it will later be screwed to the wall. To do this, I first arranged the boards for the body in the final layout. Using the table saw, I cut grooves on the back side to accommodate the back panel. This step is much easier when the boards are not yet cut into individual pieces. Once the back panel just barely fits into the grooves, we can move on to the next step. The boards were then cut to the desired length. Since I planned to join them with miters, I set a 45-degree angle on the table saw and made the cuts. After cutting the pieces, I performed a test assembly for the body to ensure everything fits together properly. For the support surfaces, I cut a white board into 2 equal wedges. Another approach is to cut equal size wedges from a thinner board for both sides. Remember, the bike's weight will be supported from the inside, so it's important to use a stronger board. You can also glue 2 wedges together to enhance strength and stability. Then attach the walnut pieces with wood glue for a refined, stylish look. Once satisfied with the fit, I sanded the inside of the body and the back panel, as these areas would be difficult to access later. Next, I glued the body to the back panel, applying an even layer of wood glue along the edges. After clamping the pieces tightly, I let them cure. Be sure to wipe away any excess glue before it dries completely. For mounting, I choose a French cleat, which you'll see in action shortly. I had 2 leftover pieces from a previous project that were nearly the right thickness, so I ran them through the thickness planer until they matched the thickness of the back panel's overhang. Next, I cut the boards to the correct length to ensure it fits perfectly into the body. Then, using a table saw, I cut the board lengthwise at a 45-degree angle down the middle, creating 2 identical pieces. One part was securely glued to the body, while the other will be screwed to the wall later. The advantage of this setup is that it provides a fast and easy mounting method, with the screws used for wall mounting hidden behind the back panel. During assembly, make sure the angles are opposite and aligned properly to ensure the wall mount stays securely in place. In the next step, I cut the 2 supports for the bike. I started by selecting a suitable piece of walnut and then cut it to size using the bandsaw, before planing it smooth. After that, I marked a rounded shape for the top tube, which I roughly cut with a jigsaw. I then sanded the edges with a sanding drum to the marked line. Since I need 2 supports, I resawed the piece on the bandsaw. To ensure that the supports can be rotated 90 degrees later, I rounded off the ends at the bandsaw and sanded them again with the sanding drum to the marked line. It would have been easier to make these curves before resawing the piece. To allow the supports to be attached to the shoe supports, I drilled and countersunk holes. The supports can then be screwed to the wedges. I pre-drilled the screws to prevent the wood from splitting. After finishing both sides, I focused on creating the holder for the helmet. I spent a lot of time experimenting with the design and the wood selection. In the end, I decided on a combination of maple and walnut. The base plate is made from a leftover piece of the cabinet parts, onto which I glued a piece of walnut at a 45-degree angle. Before gluing, I sanded the pieces. Since it was difficult to use clamps for this assembly, I used super glue to hold the parts in place until the wood glue dried. The helmet holder can then be attached to the back panel using a screw through a pre-drilled hole. I positioned the helmet holder and the mounting hole to ensure that the wall mount could later be screwed to the French cleat on the wall. To prevent the helmet holder from shifting, I secured it with a second screw through the back panel. I also screwed both shoe supports through the back panel. To do this, I measured the center and secured each support with 2 screws through the back panel. For testing, I reattached the bike supports. I think it looks pretty good already. Now it's time to disassemble everything again for sanding. I sanded all the parts, first with 120 grit sandpaper and then with 180 grit. For most surfaces I used an orbital sander. The edges and curves I mainly sanded by hand. I treated the parts with linseed oil varnish, applying it with an old t-shirt. I repeated this process twice, then wiped off any excess varnish with a fresh cloth and polished the parts. After a few hours, I reattach the bike supports. Our masterpiece is now ready to be mounted on the wall. To do this, I measured everything and mounted the loose French cleat facing inwards on the wall. Now we can easily set our wall mount onto the French cleat. Once it's properly seated, the wall mount can be secured to the wall with the screw. The next time we come home from our grabber tour, we can simply fold down the two supports and hang our bikes on the wall. We can place our shoes on the shoe supports and hang our helmet on its holder. There's also plenty of space directly beneath the helmet for glasses and other small items. If the bike is used for indoor training on the Smart Trainer, it can be easily lifted off. To avoid anyone bumping into the supports when they're folded down, they can easily be lifted back up. If you're interested in creating this wall mount yourself, you can soon find the plans in the video description. If you like this project, be sure to check out my other videos over here.